What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, undefeated, unified, 3-belt, WBC, WBA, IBF, Ring Magazine, welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, Errol the Truth Spence Jr., who is widely considered by many to be top 2, if not the number 1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Errol Spence has a record of 28 wins, no loss, no draw, 22 big wins by way of knockout, 32 years of age, 5'9.5", with a 72-inch arm reach. With that said, Errol Spence, he weighs in on all the legends picking against him without a true rhyme or reason in the biggest fight of the sport of boxing, the massive undisputed showdown between himself and undefeated 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the reigning WBO, World Boxing Organization welterweight world champion, who is widely considered by many to be the number 1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is 38 wins, no loss, no draw, 29 big wins by way of knockout. He is 34 years of age, 5'8", with a 74-inch arm reach. They make for the biggest fight in the sport of boxing when they come together. Finally, okay, it's highly anticipated. And now you have all the legends seemingly picking against Errol Spence Jr., and they're really not giving you any rhyme or reason other than Terence Crawford is just the best fighter in the world. And most recently, you had retired, legendary, iconic, Hall of Fame superstar, former undisputed middleweight reigning world champion, and Bernard, the Executioner Hopkins. He came out and he stated that Terence Crawford, he's going with Terence Crawford because Terence Crawford has fought on a higher level against better opposition and has shown the dog and shown that he can make adjustments in the fight. And when asked about Terence Crawford making adjustments in the fight, and he stated that, Terence Crawford in the second half make adjustments, when asked by the reporter in KO Artist Sports, he stated that maybe Terence Crawford had to make adjustments in the second half. Errol Spence hasn't, because Errol Spence's game plan from the beginning has worked, so he didn't have to make adjustments in the second half of the fight. Into which that was met with Bernard Hopkins responding and saying, well, that's a testament to the lack of opposition at a high level for Errol Spence, and the fact that Terence Crawford has fought much higher, better opposition than Errol Spence. And he stated that's a given, right? He stated as a fact. He stated that that's well known, okay? It's widely considered that Terence Crawford has fought better opposition than Errol Spence. And that's why he had to make adjustments in the second half of fights, and Errol Spence didn't. And he stated that Errol Spence has fought Rudy Poos, okay? And he stated that Errol Spence has fought guys that hadn't had a chance to beat him. They had no chance to beat him. They didn't even have a chance when it came to the press conference, is what Bernard Hopkins had to say. And so Errol Spence, he responded, and he stated that they simply don't like that I'm still here. So never mind he used some very choice words to describe him, but he said that they simply they're just not happy that I'm still here and I'm still at the top. Okay. It's ironic that Bernard Hopkins, now you had James Toney, retired, legendary, iconic, Hall of Fame superstar, and James Toney, multi-division world champion. He stated that Errol Spence would be lucky to get to the 6th round against Terence Crawford. Okay. You had Roy Jones. He said that Errol Spence needs to step up his level of competition. And at the same time, he's saying that he hasn't watched Errol Spence a lot, but he needs to step up his level of competition. He hasn't fought the level of competition Terence Crawford fought. And then you had retired, legendary, iconic, heavyweight, Hall of Fame, iconic superstar, former undisputed world champion, and Iron Mike Tyson. He came out, he reiterated some of the same sentiments, and he stated that he's picking Terence Crawford because Terence Crawford is more of a dog than Errol Spence. But then he stated that he's only watched highlights and clips of Errol Spence. So he never even watched a full fight of Errol Spence. But yet he's saying that he's picking Terence Crawford because Terence Crawford is more of a dog. Well, how would you know he's more of a dog if you never even watched Errol Spence fight? And as far as it goes with Bernard Hopkins saying that Terence Crawford has fought the better level of opposition, well, how could that be when we saw that Terence Crawford's biggest fight and the biggest win in his career is when he stopped 2-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Shawn Porter, who's retired and a future Hall of Famer, in his very last fight, November 20th of 2021. And he dropped him twice in the 10th round, got the stoppage when Shawn Porter, father, Kenny Porter, father, trainer, and manager, waved the white towel, said he saw enough. Well, Errol Spence beat Shawn Porter in 2019 in a unification bout. In 2019, and he too dropped Shawn Porter in the 10th round. Now, he didn't knock him out, get the stoppage, but he dropped him as well, right? And it was a nip and tuck fight, just like Terence Crawford fight was a nip and tuck fight. But he beat him for a unification bout on pay-per-view that did 325,000 pay-per-view buys 2 years ago. And Terence Crawford, that's the biggest win in his career, and he beat him in 2021 on pay-per-view, and it wasn't as successful as Errol Spence's fight with Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter, Errol Spence did 325,000 pay-per-view buys in Los Angeles, California at the Staples Center that was sold out. Terence Crawford did 140,000 pay-per-view buys in a non-title fight on the biggest sporting platform in the world, in ESPN. And that's the biggest fight of his career. So how could he be fighting at a higher level when he fought four-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer Mikey Garcia, and it did 350,000 pay-per-views. Mikey Garcia is the fourth-division champion, first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a bigger name than anybody on Terence Crawford's resume not named Shawn Porter. Okay? Then he knocked out Danny Garcia. So now you say, you compare Yoriokas Gamboa, Mikey Garcia is a bigger name and a bigger commodity and a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's just a bigger star than Yoriokas Gamboa. Now you look at Amir Khan, the other big name on Terence Crawford's resume. Well, Errol Spence, he fought and beat two-division world champion Puerto Rican superstar boxer Danny Swift Garcia, coming off of 14-month layoffs after suffering a horrific car accident just 12 days after unifying against Shawn Porter. And Danny Garcia knocked out Amir Khan. And Danny Garcia is a bigger star than Amir Khan, or at least equal, but Danny Garcia beat Amir Khan. Okay, so when you compare the two, when you compare the resumes, right, for Bernard Hopkins to say that Terence Crawford has fought way better opposition, and that's just a testament to why Errol Spence had to make adjustments in the second half of the fights. But the Terence Crawford that fought Igor Velasquez, Jose Benavidez Jr., they don't pan out. So now the other guy on the record is Kell Brook. Well, Errol Spence went to the UK for his first title opportunity. He went to the UK and beat Kell Brook in the UK for his first title opportunity and stopped Kell Brook in front of 40 to 50,000 screaming fans in the UK that was throwing brownies at Errol Spence. Terence Crawford fights Kell Brook 3.5 years later in the United States on his home soil with no fans in attendance because he's dealing with the global pandemic. Completely different level of opposition, but you saying that Terence Crawford fought the higher opposite. Now, if you say Terence Crawford is a better fighter, I'm cool with that. If you're saying that Terence Crawford is going to win the fight against Errol Spence, I'm more than cool with that. But when you're pushing a false narrative saying that he's fought better opposition, and you're saying stuff like James Toney is he lucky to get to the 6th round, and then when James Toney was asked, why did you say he's lucky to get to the 6th round? And his response is simply because Terence Crawford is the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. And he says, you don't know who Terence Crawford is? He's a dog. Well, that's not an explanation. That's not a description as to why he's going to win the fight. And Mike Tyson says he's more of a dog than Errol Spence. And then Mike Tyson admits he's only watched highlights of Errol Spence. Never even watched more than 2 fights of Errol Spence. So how would you know he's more of a dog? It's confusing as to why this narrative is being pushed, right? And Errol Spence, he said, they simply upset and they mad that I'm still here and I'm still at the top. Nonetheless, in my opinion, it's irresponsible on their part because this is the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. It's the biggest welterweight undisputed showdown since we had legendary, iconic Hall of Fame superstar boxers Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas the Hitman Hearns do so in 1981, September 16th of 1981, for undisputed when there was only 2 belts on the line, the WBA and the WBC. That's over 40 years ago. This is the biggest fight in the sport of boxing currently as it stands. Now, the biggest fight overall in the history of the sport of boxing was Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. But the actual product didn't live up to the billing because Manny Pacquiao was overhyped as the guy that finally beat and dethroned Floyd Mayweather and put a blemish on his resume. Well, that was people hoping that they see Floyd Mayweather lose, not really living in reality. So to push a false narrative on this biggest fight in the sport of boxing is irresponsible by these legends, and they're not giving a great explanation as to why. And so Errol Spence responds by saying they're just simply mad because I'm still at the top. So let's see how this all unfolds and plays out moving forward. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button, drop a comment in the comment section, let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shouts out to the entire LDBC. Shouts out to Black Media Roll. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.